Um, I wanted to talk about the Senator Clementa Pinckney. I didn't know much about him until recently, actually. And curiously, in the news reports from the Charleston 9 attack over a year ago, and because I don't actually watch television, I get my news from just using just the search engines, but it wasn't really widely publicized to my knowledge from my source of media consumption, which is just like opening search engines and like the top story shows up or whatever. But it wasn't really emphasized that a state senator had been killed. It's like you hear the pastor been killed, but it's almost like his political standing in the community was not emphasized, or it was de-emphasized. And that's curious. To me, that's just, that in itself is suspicious. But there are other things that are also suspicious in the way Senator Reverend Pinckney was murdered. And I think it points to an assassination. Okay, Denmark Vesey was one of the founders of African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston. AME Church is the oldest independent Protestant denomination founded by Black people. It's the oldest African Methodist Episcopal church in the South, often referred to as Mother Emanuel. In 1822, the church was investigated for involvement with a planned slave revolt. Denmark Vesey organized a major slave uprising in Charleston. In 1821, Vesey began organizing a slave rebellion, but authorities were informed of the plot before it could take place. The church's co-founders, Denmark Vesey, was suspected of planning a slave rebellion in Charleston in 1822, and people, including Vesey, were hanged, and the church was burned down. The shooting of the Charleston 9 occurred on the anniversary of the planned uprising by Vesey. Coincidence? Dylann Roof drove over 100 miles to kill Black people. Clementa Pinckney was well aware of Vesey and the church's rich history and spoke about it. And I provided a link down below to his speech. And at 3 minutes and 18 seconds, he says the spirit of Denmark Vesey. And he says more stuff about Denmark Vesey and the history of the church. So just watch the video and you will get an understanding of how much he understood the history and the significance of the church. He was a South Carolina state senator. He was, a pastor and very politically active. Spoke eloquently, let's see. Now, concerning these survivors, Sylvia Johnson, Clementa Pinckney's cousin, heard about what happened inside the church from a survivor and close friend who pretended to be dead. Her friend recounted that Dylann Roof came into the church and asked for the minister. So he asked for the pastor of the church. And he sat right next to Reverend Senator Clementa Pinckney. So he drove over 100 miles, asked for the pastor of the church, sat next to him. Now, another survivor, Polly Shepard, said Dylann Roof asked her, "Did I shoot you yet?" And she said no. And he said, "I'm not going to. I'm going to leave you here to tell the story." And I've also provided a link to that. So just it's it shows like plan and, you know, premeditation and whatnot. Now, during the eulogy that President Obama gave, he made a curious statement about the phoenix rising from the ashes, you know, referring to the church, you know, being the church was burned down and rose again. But the phoenix is actually satanic, occult, Masonic symbolism, which wouldn't be appropriate during a Christian eulogy. So, you know, look up the phoenix. It has nothing to do with Christianity, but satanic, Masonic symbolism. Dylan Roof told Dwayne Stafford, the guy who beat him in prison, after they, you know, the guy basically got to know Dylan Roof because he wanted to understand what he perceived to be something that didn't make sense. You know, like he was trying to understand Dylan Roof's motives, and Dylan Roof, and basically they, you know, at first it was just talk, you know, but Dylan Roof offended him, and then the guy beat him. But before that happened, Dylan Roof actually gave a little bit of insight into his plot. And Dwayne Stafford said that he used to blame it on other people, but he said he wrong, but like it wasn't his idea. He don't want to tell me who he's associated with, but he's involved with people. I don't know who they are or what they represent. Again, Dwayne Stafford said that Dylan Roof didn't want to tell him, was withholding from him who he was associated with. So the lone gunman situation doesn't appear to be the case here, because he's withholding information about who he's associated with. But yeah, this is just this is something that needs to be further investigated, because it very much it appears to be an assassination.